Hi everyone. I thought today I'd show you how I set up my palette. This is Diane Hunt Studio and Paint Nature Connect. And first of all, I used to have, or I still use this palette. It's a wooden palette, the old type of wooden palette. Um, I've used this palette for over 40 years, and it's done a great job. I learned how to paint with this palette, so it's been in my life for a very long time. When I was learning how to paint, I was taught to set up the palette. Um, you want to set up your palette the same way every time so that you're not searching around for color when you're actually painting and you're not like picking the wrong one, because some of these darker colors, they are very hard to tell what they are when they're on your palette. And if you don't have them in a certain order, you might pick the wrong one and get something totally off the wall that you weren't expecting. So it is good to always have your palette set up exactly the same, no matter where you have it. Um, and I was taught to have the earth colors together, all the warm colors together, and all the cool colors together. And I have a white in between the two. So this palette is nice. It's like a neutral brownish color. So I could see my light colors on it as well as my dark colors. And so I've tried to replicate that in my studio. I decided to try a glass palette since it would give me a lot in my studio. I've always used this palette for studio and plein air, but I am limited on the amount of surface I have to mix colors with. So I thought I'd try a glass palette and see, I'd have more space and see how I liked it, because I've seen a lot of other artists using a glass palette. So um, I will still continue to use this palette when I go out plein air painting. But so in my studio, I set up this nice glass palette. I still wanted to have that neutral brownish color underneath, behind it, um, so that I can mix my colors and have something similar to what I had with my wood palette. But I couldn't find really paper the exact color, but I figure any, neutral kind of medium middle ground um, brownish color would kind of work. So I had a paper bag from the grocery store, and I just opened it up, and so this is just brown paper. It's a brown paper grocery bag, and the glass I gotten out of an old door that I had here. I just took it out of the door and scraped all the old paint that was around the edges off of it and cleaned it all up and put it on the paper. When I first started doing it, mixing on the palette, it was sliding around on me, so I decided to tape it in a couple spots just to help hold it in place. Um, and that seems to be working really great. I have the papers weighted down with other stuff around here on my desktop, so um, it's holding it in place for me now. Um, so if we'll go to my palette here so we can see it a little bit better. So this is what I have, and I put the colors of the labels of all the colors that I have on my palette all along the edge, so you can see, what I have. I have quite a few colors on my palette, but I've developed this over the years. Um, I've added colors here and there, and other colors I'm trying out, so I have them on here as well. So you can have as many, as little as you want, but when you're first starting painting, you probably don't want to have too many, because you do have to learn what your colors will do. And if you have too many, it just gets overwhelming, and it is better to learn a little bit at a time rather than trying to jump into all these colors at one time. So there's a lot of artists nowadays, especially, are using limited palettes where they have a white and one or two of each of the primary colors, and that's all they have, and they can pretty much mix anything they need from those, and that's basically will work. But there are certain things that will speed up the process and are nice to have already kind of pre-mixed on your palette. So I have, I don't even know how many are on here, but there's quite a few on here. But I've been using these, over the years, so I'm very used to what they can do and what colors mix together to give me what I need. So you're welcome to set up yours the same way, or try a limited palette where there's not as many colors to have to deal with at one time. It depends on what level you're at and how long you've been painting, and it just depends. So if you're taking a class with another artist, or studying somebody online or in a book or something, that each artist pretty much has their own palette of colors that they like, and they probably also have their own brands of those colors that they prefer. So if you're trying to learn something from a certain artist, it is probably better to use what they're using so that you can get the same result that they're trying to teach you. Because there's a lot of colors that are named the same names in different brands, but the colors are completely different. So it is good to try to stay with the same ones all the time if you really like them. If you don't like them, then you can be a little more open to switching and trying a different brand of that same color. Paints are made with different oils in them. They're made with different pigments. Some are, they're combinations of different pigments, and some are lean more one way than the other in different brands. So it just depends on what your preferences are, really. And you won't know that to start with, but over time, as you paint and get to know them a little bit better, you can decide for yourself which ones you prefer, which ones work better for what the type of painting you're doing. So, give different ones a try if you're not happy with what ones you have. But right now, I've set my palette up exactly the same way I had it on the wood palette. I have all my earth colors off to the left. Then I have all my warm colors around this corner here to the middle. And then I have my white, and then I have all my cool colors. If I was just putting these out wherever, I felt like it on my palette, when I went to paint, I would probably be picking the wrong, especially the darker colors. I'd probably be picking the wrong one because I wouldn't know what it was. Some of them are really hard to tell. I guess you can probably even tell in this video that you can't really tell what color that is compared to this one. They're very close in color, and when you don't have them set up in a exact order, you wouldn't know which one to pick when you're trying to mix a color. And the same way with some of these over here, they're all very dark, and if you don't have them in the same spot, when you're trying to mix your colors, you might grab the wrong one. So I recommend setting it up however you do it, the exact same way every time. It just makes things flow a lot better. You're not making mistakes and taking time trying to figure out where the color is or whatever, wasting paint, mixing up the wrong ones. So what I have is burnt umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna, Naples yellow, yellow ochre. They're all my earth colors. Then I go into the warm colors. I have alizarin crimson. You should try to find alizarin crimson permanent, because the regular alizarin crimson is a fugitive color, what they call a fugitive color. It can, with over time, if it's in like sunlight or just different light situations, it can lose some of its redness. So you want to be careful of that. Permanent rose and Terra rose are two colors that I've heard about, or I studied with a certain teacher and they recommended those colors. And I have them on here because I bought a tube of each of them, and I'm trying them out to see how I like them. So right now they're here. Cadmium yellow, cadmium red deep, cadmium red light, cadmium orange, titanium white. Now there's lots of different colors of white out there as well. I use titanium white most of the time, but depending on what I'm painting, I might switch off and use some of the other whites. That just depends. But most of the time I do use titanium. And then there's viridian green, Chrome Green Deep, Green Gold, Sap Green, Permanent Green Light, Cerulean Blue, Cobalt Blue, and Ultramarine Blue. Now, most of these colors, there's a couple greens in here as well that I'm trying out, but most of these colors have been on my palette for 40 years or whatever. So I'm very used to them. I've spent a lot of time when I first started learning to paint, learning what the different properties were and how they mixed up and what colors I could get from what. We did some color graphs and different mixes to see what kind of colors you could get from each color. And so I became very familiar with what they can do. And so for the most part, except for there's one couple that I'm experimenting with, I know what I can get out of my colors, and I do set it up the exact same way all the time. Now, using this glass palette, it is a little slicker than my wood palette. So I did have a little difficulty at first mixing on the glass. It is a slicker surface, and I didn't like it quite as much at first, but now I've gotten used to it. It's working fine, and I love having all this extra space to mix color in. It really makes a big difference. Rather than trying to keep all my little puddles on this palette and in a much smaller space. So I probably have about 3 times, maybe 4 times as much space to mix color on as I had on this palette. But so if you're interested, the glass you should get is maybe, this is a tempered piece of glass, which means it won't break as easily. It's, a little tougher than just the thin glass like you have in a picture frame or something. That won't work because it's too thin. When you start pushing down with your palette knife to mix color, it will break under the pressure. So it is better to get a little bit thicker piece and to get tempered glass. This actually is finished all around the edges, which is nice because I don't have to worry about cutting myself. But if the piece you find, or if you get a piece that's not, you can always put tape or something around the edge to keep it from cutting you when you're working on it and stuff. So I also use this paint scraper. It's just a knife, regular razor blade in it, to scrape off the paint when I'm done mixing, or to clean it off when I need to as I'm painting. And that works really well on the glass. It doesn't work so good on the wood palette because it'll cut into it, and that's not good. So on that one, I just have to, wipe it down really well with paper towels and stuff. So it's got a pretty nice sheen on it from being used for so long with all these, different mediums and stuff. It's built up on here. It's gotten a nice varnish kind of surface on it. But on the glass, you can just take that palette knife and or the knife blade and just clean it right off. There's no problem at all cleaning it. It's really easy. So that saves you time as well, and paper towels and, and all that. So anyway, so that's how I set my palette up. If you have any ideas on other ways to set yours up, I'd love to hear how you do it. It's always great to get new tips and tricks from other people, things I hadn't thought of, I'm sure. So you can write that into the comments. And if you like what I'm putting out there, sign up, subscribe to the channel, and give me a thumbs up, and I'll continue doing these kind of videos. Anyway, until next time, happy painting.